Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It's so amazing to have you back here for another Bible Monday episode, the third one in our series, New Year, New Jesus. And I hope you're excited for it because I am as well. Today we're going to talk about even in the silence, and let's see what that means. Stick along. Misconception that we are going to attack today is a misconception that you must be in sin if you're not hearing from God, that you have to pray harder, fast harder, worship harder, do something harder so that the silence can break, God can hear you, and the blessings of heaven come down. And that's something that we've heard before, and there are exceptions. There are exceptions to that, and it might be true in some cases. The Bible clearly states some verses where if you are in unforgiveness or in unconfessed sin or in disobedience, God is not going to hear you, and that's very clear. And I'm going to put those verses down below in the description box, and I'm also going to link to some very helpful articles that really do talk about that in more detail. And if that's you, and if you feel like you fit into that mold, please take a look at those things. Please take a look, because the object here is to restore you back to health and to restore you back into a relationship with Christ, right? That's the point. But if you feel like that doesn't apply to you, if you feel like you're doing all the right things, if you feel like, you're worshiping God, but your worship sounds like noise and you're lifting your hands, but that's all it feels like you're doing. And maybe you're praying, but it feels like you're talking to yourself and it feels like a one-way street instead of a conversation. If maybe you are reading your Bible, but instead of it feeling like the living word, it just feels like you're reading a newspaper. If you feel like you're in that situation and you're wondering why, and you don't feel like there is any unconfessed sin or any unforgiveness, and you're wondering why, let me tell you that I am a firm believer that silence is something that you need. It's necessary to grow in your relationship with God. And that might be a very controversial statement for some people, but I think that is true. We need it. We need it to grow. How come? Why? Well, I know that if we constantly heard from God how we wanted to and when we wanted to and how we expected Him to answer us, we would continuously chase a God experience. We would chase the miracle, we would chase the healing, we would chase the spiritual jolt. We'll chase a spiritual high instead of pursuing a relationship with Christ. We'd see Him as a bit of a jack in the box that we get to crank up and have the miracle or, whatever we're expecting come out whenever we want it to, instead of it being about a relationship with God. And when we do that, what we're doing is that we're saying that we can control God, right? So if He's not answering when we want Him to, I need to control Him and I need to maintain that sense of control over my own life. But newsflash, He's God, right? And He cannot be controlled. And that's what He calls us to. He calls us to abide in Him. He calls us to wait on Him, not to control Him. So let's read a verse. It's John chapter 15, verse 4. And it says, "Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me." And I love this tree metaphor. We see that sometimes a tree goes through this cycle being full of fruit, right? An apple tree, let's say, and it's full of fruit and fruit is everywhere and there are apples on the ground and, there's just apples everywhere. But there are also times when maybe it's the winter season, it's January, it's February like it is now, and you don't see any apples on this tree. And just because you don't see any apples on this tree doesn't make the tree any less of an apple tree. You just say that it's par for the course. It's the winter time. We don't expect apples right now. We expect apples later. And how crazy would it be to see someone over there just, yelling at this tree like, "I want apples right now, even though it's January. I want apples right now. Give me apples." You're yelling a little harder. Maybe you're kicking the tree, you're punching at the tree or whatever. And you're going to look at this dude and you're going to be like, "This dude is crazy. Like, what's wrong with him?" Like, doesn't he know it's winter? So yeah. So in that same way, isn't that how maybe sometimes we approach God? Right? We approach God and we think, I'm just going to fast a little harder, pray a little harder, yell a little harder, sing a little louder, and, that's going to move God. Then He'll be bound to say something. He'll be bound to listen if I just do a little more, right? But I'm looking at you like that guy who's yelling at the tree in the wintertime. It's just not the moment. Just like how that tree is in a moment of winter, you are in a moment of silence. And the key here in those moments of silence are to abide. just like that verse says, to abide in the Lord, to abide in Him, to wait on God. We have to be made aware, and sometimes painfully so, that we cannot coerce or control God with our frantic maneuvering, with the things that we do. We have to understand that we are in God's service, that He is not in our service, because He is the almighty, omnipotent, living God, right? And we have to wait on God. We have to wait on Him, and there are no shortcuts to waiting. There are no shortcuts to waiting. We just have to wait. And waiting on God is critical to knowing God, because it teaches us that we are not God. And that's important. And that's a lesson that we all have to learn. We're not God, and I don't want to be. Every tree has its season of winter, and every believer goes through a season of silence. And that winter, that season of silence, is just par for the course. And while maybe there are no fruit on the branches, and you don't hear anything, you can't really see anything, there's something going on, right? Like down deep under in the roots of the tree, there's something bubbling, there's something going on that will make it so that in the summertime, in the springtime, you will see fruit like never before. If you get through this period of waiting, if you get through this period of maybe not quite hearing something from God, but abiding in Him still, and that's the key, but abiding in Him still, you're going to see the fruit of that labor, the fruit of that reward on the other side, right? And I'm just reminded of this one verse that's amazing. It's that the work that God has started in you, He will complete until the day of Jesus Christ. So hold on to that. And know that God has started a good work in you, and He is not done yet. He's not finished yet, and He will complete it. He will. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed this Bible Monday, and I will see you again next week.